Travis Kelce, 6 targets, all right. 4 catches for 23 yards and no touchdowns? All right, CeeDee Lamb, what'd you do today? 5 targets, all right. 2 catches for only 13 yards? All right, Aaron Jones against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Come on, baby, what'd you get? 15 carries for 81. Wait, that's A.J. Dillon? 15 for 48, no touchdowns? What the f***?
Yeah. Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, Headliner Nation, what is going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here with a show that we might be making a regular thing, and we're going to start calling this WTF for week 4 of the fantasy football season. Kind of maybe like an instant reaction type video to take a look at some of the guys that overperformed and underperformed last week and just give some real quick hits on maybe why that was. Do we expect it to continue? Things of that nature. We've kind of done some of this to start. Jake did kind of a what the episode from week 3. I did kind of a response last week and said, hey, here are some guys who maybe are underperforming so far, but could bounce back. But we're seeing quite a few of you asking us like, hey guys, can you start doing like a recap of the week or something like that? So who knows? I'm not going to promise anything, Headliner Nation. We're already on a really tight schedule as it is, but maybe this is something that we can start adding to the mix here in the afternoons on Mondays. But let's go ahead and take a look at it. I've got running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends that we're going to take a quick look at. And we're going to take a look at some guys who surprised that finished much higher than anticipated and some guys who finished much lower than anticipated. And I still think that this is going to be a really great video for you guys to visualize where guys are falling. Because, I mean, you know, the trolls come back every single week and they're like, hey, I thought you said to start. Well, this will give you a better idea, maybe a better representation of how honestly truthful, how hard it is to predict all these things on any given week, especially this year when it seems like there's a lot of inconsistencies with a lot of players. So let's go ahead and kick it off. We're going to talk about running backs to start things off. And Cordarrelle Patterson, I feel like I told a lot of people on the live show Saturday and Sunday to start Cordarrelle Patterson. So am I glad he had a good week? Yeah, of course I'm glad he had a good week. But RB1, and again, this is all in half PPR scoring, crazy. Just absolutely crazy that Cordarrelle Patterson is having the type of impact he has so far this season. Listed as a running back, but essentially playing wide receiver. So he is all over the place right now. Most of his yards and his production coming in the passing game. James Conner was the RB6 this past week, scored a couple of touchdowns. Kenneth Gainwell coming out of nowhere is the RB10. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense what they're doing there right now with Miles Sanders. To get Gainwell as many touches as he had and to watch Miles Sanders just kind of disappear into the abyss doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it really honestly makes me feel like the coaching staff in the front office there are like, we drafted Gainwell. We didn't draft Sanders. We want to give him more touches. That's what it feels like to me. Chase Edmonds coming in at RB11. I think we're expecting, decent performances, but for him and James Conner against the LA Rams to finish as top 12 running backs is absolutely insane. Here's a name that you probably haven't seen in a while. Alex Collins, man. Oh my gosh. I loved Alex Collins when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. Just to see him bounce back yesterday was a lot of fun. And I mentioned him in the waiver wire video, but he came in at RB14 this past week. Not exactly sure what happened with Chris Carson. Not exactly sure why they gave Alex Collins so many touches. Definitely something to look forward to in the future if for some reason Chris Carson were to miss any time. Jeremy McNichols at RB20, a ton of targets yesterday as a running back in the passing game for the Titans. Caught me off guard. I don't know why they didn't run nearly as much as they did, and I don't know why they didn't utilize Anthony Firkser a lot more than what they did in the passing game. They gave a lot of targets to Jeremy McNichols. So several RBs right there that more than likely, outside of maybe Cordarrelle Patterson and Chase Edmonds, I mean, some people may have been starting James Conner. I don't think there was anybody starting Gainwell, Collins, or McNichols last week. But what about some guys that underperformed? Well, of all of these guys listed here, more than likely you were starting these guys in some capacity this week. Alvin Kamara, by our standards here, because remember, if we call someone a start, they have to get at least 10 half PPR points. Kamara got 12. He's the only one of this group right here who actually would have been a start last week. So Alvin Kamara came in at RB22, Aaron Jones at RB28. A lot of touches for A.J. Dillon in week 4, which caught me off guard. Wasn't anticipating that many touches going to him, but I think they found it with as much usage as Aaron Jones has had the last couple of weeks. They found a good opportunity to get some to A.J. Dillon and just not overwork Aaron Jones in a matchup that they probably were pretty confident in going up against Pittsburgh. Chuba Hubbard, I mean, Jake got a lot of crap last week for really saying, hey, I'm not interested in Chuba Hubbard this week. I understand why people are excited about him. And really the argument back was, well, look at what Mike Davis did last year. Well, completely different scenario here, ladies and gentlemen. And Chuba Hubbard coming in under 10 fantasy points this past week, finishing as the RB32. DeAndre Swift, this makes no sense to me because Dan Campbell earlier in the week was like, oh, DeAndre Swift he has earned the right to get more touches. Jamal Williams had 7 carries to DeAndre Swift's 2 in the first quarter. So are they really trying to get DeAndre Swift more touches? Because it doesn't feel like it. And then the passing game, they really did everything they could. The Bears focused on taking DeAndre Swift out of the passing game. He finishes as RB37. Miles Sanders, I mentioned it with Kenneth Gainwell. Not sure what they're doing there with him, but it feels like the coaching staff isn't buying into Sanders. And then Chris Carson, mentioned it with Alex Collins already. He finishes as the RB46. So what happens now at the wide receiver position? Whoa, man. So out of these right here, the only 2 players that I had listed as starts at the wide receiver position was I did have Khalif Raymond and Darnell Mooney as a start. I didn't have Jefferson, Cobb, Crowder, or Ross. Cobb ends up scoring 2 touchdowns this past week. So he finally gets going with MVS not being there. I thought maybe Bob Tunyon might get a little bit more work this week finally, but he didn't. It went to Randall Cobb instead. Khalif Raymond starts off the game slow, but he ends up scoring 2 touchdowns. And I mentioned him also in the waiver wire video. I think Khalif Raymond can end up becoming a guy for Jared Goff that is the most consistent option on the team outside of TJ Hawkinson, who unfortunately had another bad week. But that's because the teams are really keying in on him right now. Van Jefferson coming in as the wide receiver 9. You know, we've talked about him quite a bit over the last few weeks. He's a guy that is really helping propel the deep game for the Rams right now. But he outscored Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods this week and Tyler Higbee. So, I mean, he was the guy. He was the highest scoring player on that offense. Darnell Mooney with a huge game. Heard a lot of feedback about him. I mean, there were some people in the comments last week who were like, how can you start Darnell Mooney? You can't even start Allen Robinson. And I was just hoping. I was like, Matt Nagy, come on. Extend the passing game. Give Justin Fields a little bit extra. And Justin Fields, you could see that arm, the deep ball accuracy, processing the field. It was there this past week. And Darnell Mooney benefited quite a bit from it. Jamison Crowder coming back out of nowhere. I mean, he's been out the first 3 weeks, comes back in week 4, and he makes an appearance as a top 15 wide receiver. Something to monitor going forward. Even Corey Davis had a good week this week too. So it wasn't like Jamison Crowder became the wide receiver 1. No, this is a spot that he's filled before where he is that guy in the slot. He could become a really, really nice target for Zach Wilson to kind of help boost that confidence on those intermediate throws that have a lot higher completion percentage. John Ross, wide receiver 16. No Sterling Shepard this week. Darius Slayton banged up. John Ross catches a touchdown out of nowhere, finishes as the wide receiver 16. I don't expect that to continue by any means, but it is interesting that he was able to connect with Daniel Jones deep. Week 4 notables at the wide receiver position. A lot of guys that didn't hit this week. And these are really all names that you were starting. And again, this is kind of my point at the beginning of the video where this position is really, really difficult right now. There is a lot of inconsistency at the wide receiver position. It's very, very tough to figure out who to play and who not to play on a weekly basis. And I have I have kind of a background on why I believe that is, but I'm working on a potential extra video. It might be a members only video, maybe in the coming week or so that I might want to do, but I'll let you all know when that drops. But kind of going over why the inconsistencies potentially may be there. I mean, Antonio Brown, who would have thought Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin at wide receiver 53, Antonio Brown wide receiver 33. Who would have thought that Tom Brady going back into New England, that he would have had such a poor game? Didn't turn the ball over at all, but man, it was a game of kickers on Sunday night. So Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin both underperforming. Devontae Adams didn't even crack wide receiver 3 or barely cracked wide receiver 3 status. The same goes with Cooper Kupp. I mean, the guy's been an absolute dominating force so far to begin the season, and the dude was on lockdown this past week. DeAndre Hopkins, this was one where a lot of people, DeAndre Hopkins and Brandon Cooks, I got a lot of negative feedback on both these guys because I put Hopkins as a sit this week. Like, it doesn't happen often where we see a matchup and we say, man, I don't know if I'm starting this stud this week. And with DeAndre Hopkins, I told everyone, I was like, if you own him, you're probably playing him. But the reason I'm listing him as a start or as a sit, because I think he gets under 10 fantasy points. Was he still banged up? I don't know. But the Jalen Ramsey matchup was tough. He ends up finishing as the wide receiver 42, and Brandon Cooks. I had him as a start, but I had him really, really low in my rankings. I had this guy into the 30s, and I was just concerned, like, this is just not a great matchup for him, and it wasn't for Houston at all. Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 58. Adam Thielen, wide receiver 59. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 68. Odell Beckham Jr. I ended up being wrong on him. I had him as the wide receiver 11 this past week. I liked Odell coming into this week, and it's unfortunate that Baker Mayfield played like absolute garbage. For what reason? I don't know. Tough matchup, just didn't have it, whatever it may be. It really wasn't even a tough matchup, but he let 2 balls sail on Odell Beckham Jr. One of them would have been a touchdown. The other one would have been a decent game. And the other one that would have been a touchdown probably would have been a 70-yard touchdown if he would have had it in front of him, but he threw it behind him, and Odell Beckham Jr. had to try to come to a stop, and he couldn't make the catch. So, I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. almost absolutely skyrocketed but that's how close these things can be. I mean, honestly, 2 bad passes by Baker Mayfield, and that's what keeps me from being wrong on Odell Beckham Jr. last week. I mean, that's just how it is sometimes. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, with Amari Cooper banged up, he ends up leaving the game at the beginning, isn't out very long, but ends up having to sit for a few minutes, right? CeeDee Lamb, I mean, we come back, absolutely nothing. I mean, the guy he had 5 targets, but he did absolutely nothing with those targets this past week. Same thing for Juju. Like, Juju got a nice amount of targets this week. Absolutely nothing. I mean, these wide receivers right now, there's a lot of them that are getting a decent amount of targets, but they're just not turning into anything. It is a really, really tough position to call right now. A position that's always tough to call, the tight ends. I mean, Dawson Knox, the tight end 1, I've been talking about him for a while at this point. Dawson Knox, definitely a guy that I think is taking over kind of that Cole Beasley intermediate role. I think he's really feasting in the middle of the field right now, and that's going to hurt Cole Beasley, but it is great for Dawson Knox. Love me some Dawson Knox. Chris Chouse, our resident Buffalo Bills fan. This offseason, he was like, oh, man, I hope they get Ertz, or I hope they get Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. He was excited. He was hoping that they would add to that offense. And I was like, dude, I get it. That would be exciting. But, man, do I love Dawson Knox. I just don't feel like he's been healthy enough and gotten the opportunity yet. He's getting an opportunity now, and he is playing so well. Mo Cox, Mo Problems coming out of nowhere to become the tight end 2 this week. He found the end zone. Max Williams, he's kind of on again, off again right now. It's just hard for me to trust Max Williams with all of the passing weapons they have there. Juwan Johnson was a guy I had listed as a start. I called a touchdown for him this week. I said I really think he's going to score, and he ends up finding the end zone. Ross Dwelley. Juwan Johnson is not running very many routes right now, though. He's not running very many routes, though, and that's kind of the problem. Adam Troutman is running far more routes than Juwan Johnson is, but Juwan Johnson is a touchdown upside play in good matchups. So, like, I'm not going to have him as a start every single week. This was really kind of a one-off. And then Ross Dwelley, I mean, come on. A tight end for the San Francisco 49ers scores, and it's not George Kittle. Are you kidding me? 1 touchdown puts him as the tight end 13 this week. Absolutely ridiculous. The tight end position was tough this week. I mean, Kyle Pitts, tight end 15. Didn't do anything with the targets once again. TJ Hawkinson, again, a good amount of targets. Didn't do anything with them. George Kittle had a tough week. Tyler Higbee had a tough week. Travis Kelce, I mean, the tight end 1 every single week barely finishes as a tight end 2 this week. I mean, just an awful game for Travis Kelce. And Cameron Brate, I mean, we were thinking touchdown upside with Cameron Brate, right? No Rob Gronkowski on the road against New England. Tom Brady has looked towards the tight end position a lot with Gronkowski this year. Cameron Brate has a lot of good touchdown upside this week. And then we get into Sunday Night Football, and it's basically the name of this school, or the name of this video. WTF, right? That's what we're feeling like right now with the fantasy football season. But this is something I might want to start doing a quick video, like 15 minutes or so. Just, hey, what happened this past week? Kind of giving my thoughts and opinions on it really fast. Where some guys finished. Guys that finished way higher than anticipated, way lower than anticipated. Show you where some of those studs, where that ended up happening at. Maybe trying to talk about that a little bit. But hopefully it's just a little something extra to kind of help you all navigate what has been a pretty inconsistent season so far in fantasy football. But do me a favor, if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, you got to hit that subscribe button. Stick around. You also need to leave me a comment down below. Who's a stud that maybe you're worried about right now, or somebody that's caught you off guard that you have on your team? And then as always, hit that like button for me. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. You all stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on third down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that Chubb life. Stuck in a rut and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation.
I'm a headliner.